I'm Jim Browning, I'm known as a scam baiter, and I hack into scammers' CCTV, and I've managed to close down hundreds of scam call centres. This is how crime works. What I do is disrupt multi-million-dollar scams, the ringleaders exposed, and those people have an awful lot of money behind them. Why the silhouette? Well, it can be quite dangerous. You can imagine the type of things that they may decide to do to stop me. Up until recently, had a normal day job, and sometimes I would work at home, and I would constantly get the same phone calls that I think most people get, and you instantly know it's a scam. But I was getting those so often that it was interrupting my normal work. I thought, I'm an engineer. I know about computers, know about networks. Maybe I can do something about this, or at least I want to find out what it is they're really after and maybe report the people in the hope that I could stop the calls. I encountered Fairmart Travels back in 2019. They were operating a pop-up scam. I was browsing the internet. Suddenly this message pops up saying I've got a virus, and I had to call a number that locked my keyboard and mouse. And from experience, I know that that's a scam, but I deliberately called the number. They told me that they were a Microsoft affiliate and they needed access to my computer. But I have this little trick where if someone connects to my computer, I can reverse that connection, and that enables me to see their computer. And I was able to find out quite a lot of data and video and audio. Of course, the people on the end of the phone are primed to persuade you that you've got a computer problem. They will want you to, although they may not say the words remote access to your computer, they will deliberately misdiagnose it. And to fix that problem, even though there's no problem, you would have to pay them. And it varies anywhere between maybe a few £100 up to a few £1,000. They will talk reasonably technical sounding language deliberately, but it's all just a script. Most people who are victims of that scam think that it's some friendly person trying to help them out, when in fact there was nothing wrong whatsoever. It's not just done once, they're scammed multiple times after that. The setup can be very tiny. You can run a scam call center out of a hotel room. You don't need particularly expensive computers to run a scam, and I think a lot of scammers know that. And what I typically find is they will run the oldest of old computers just because they're cheap. The average scam call center has between 10 and 20 people. Fairmart Travels, they set themselves up as a travel agency. They were running out of 2 buildings in a suburb of New Delhi. In those days, the front offices were all running legitimate work, but in literally the offices behind that building, they ran a scam operation. In fact, they used the same telephone system that they did for their legitimate work, but in the background, they would run this scam call center. So they had almost a perfect setup so that if the police ever did raid the places, they could always point the police to their legitimate work. They actually recorded their phone calls, and I was able to download over 70,000 scam phone calls from other operators in that room. It did help that I could see at the supervisor's computer, so I could see the messages going from the people who actually operated the calls right back to the CEO of the company. So if you can think about it, any normal office organization, they had exactly that structure. The agents are incentivized on how much money they make, and because of that, they get a bonus at the end of the month. So they had supervisors who would tot up every agent's performance. And if you can make more than 30 successful calls, for example, you will make more money. I have seen in other operations that if you don't make your targets, typically you're out of the business completely. It was an operation that ran 24/7. They would have different shifts. So they would target Australia early in their daytime, it would move to Europe in the afternoons and evenings, and then at night time it would be the USA. There was another person who was the accountant for the company. They knew which channel it came from, so what sort of scam operation they were running that day, which country it involved, which currency it involved, which payment gateway it involved. He would have all of the detail of that money going into huge spreadsheets, and of course then that would be laundered elsewhere. So they had everything you would expect in a real office building. They had a HR department, quality assurance department. They would actually listen to some of the scam phone calls and feed back to the agents how they could run the scam better. I was able to see exactly what the CEO was doing because there was a CCTV camera in his office. It was the only one with audio. And he would spend a small portion of the day looking after his legitimate business, the travel agency business. But an awful long part of the day was spent making sure that the next type of scam was going to happen. I did hear him discussing an Amazon scam and how he would set that up. Things like how they would process the money were discussed. Occasionally I will encounter networks of money launderers, and if they're asking victims to transfer money, normally it will be to a bank account in their own country. And the reason for that is it's much, much more simple for money to go out of a victim account into a local bank account, a reasonably local bank account. But of course, it hasn't got back to the scammer yet, so there has to be a network of people who will take that initial transfer and move it between a number of countries. An average scam will have at least one money mule in the UK, one money mule at least in a different country other than India, typically Thailand, and between them they will move money between jurisdictions. I have seen Telegram and Skype groups specifically set up to allow money transfers to happen. So I know with Fairmart Technologies, I was able to see exactly where the money went when it came between the victims and right through to the company. So I could see as each payment was being made, there was an individual transaction in PayPal which went to a company called Adrit Technologies. And Amit Chohan is the CEO of, or was the CEO of Adrit Technologies. So I got a direct payment link between the victims and his company. And I could tell that he was making at least tens of thousands of dollars per month, but it was closer to $100,000 a month. What they would get is average about $10,000 to $12,000 just from scams each day. But I've seen call centers which are upwards of 200 employees, and they can make more than $8 million a month. Now, I have encountered a victim in the UK who had already lost £100,000 to scammers. People write to me as well to say that they have lost a lot more than that again. And again, there's practically nothing I can do once the money has already been stolen. Seeking out victims, criminals absolutely use social media. I'm on a Facebook group where scammers sell people's personal data, and there's very little enforcement for that. They will also sell things like credit card numbers. Those are sold openly on Facebook. I get to hear a lot of the calls that scammers make, and I've heard everything from teenagers right through to people in their 90s falling for these. The types of scam, though, that I look at are more likely to affect older people. Fairmart Travels were a little bit different from the average scam call center that I look at because they pay a third party to put adverts onto websites. And the advert itself is called a malvert, a malicious advert. It goes full screen, has a bit of very loud audio saying your computer is a virus, but most importantly, it has a phone number on it. The one way to tell whether it's a scam is a phone number. If you see a phone number on your screen, 100% of the time that is going to be a scam. Your antivirus will not ask you to call a phone number. They wait for victims to come to them, then they would simply get the inbound calls. So that's how they seek out victims. The kind of victim they're after is somebody who's not computer literate. I have to lull them into a false sense of security. So I have to appear convincing. I can't be somebody who is very good with computers, type stuff in really quickly, because they'll instantly get suspicious. So whenever I engage with scammers, I have a voice changer. I know in advance what my name, address, credit card, and everything else will be. I also have a fake bank page, which I will deliberately flash or show to a scammer to make it look as if I have loads of money. All I need is a little bit of knowledge about the system they use to make that phone call for me to hear other phone calls. I not only can hear the calls, I can see the phone numbers they are calling, and I can see a phone call has lasted more than, say, 5 minutes. It's very likely that that person is being scammed. And what I do is typically call the person when they've hung up and say, by the way, did you know that you were not speaking with your bank, or you were not speaking with Amazon? And that is quite often a surprise to the people who've been on the phone for so long, because they can be incredibly persuasive. They use terminology all the time. There's never a victim, there's always a customer. So you're a customer, of course, and that's the term I kind of hate, because not one person that I encounter is a real customer in any shape or form. Yes, process, and whenever you go for an interview in a scam call center, you have to use the term an Amazon process or a banking process or a refund process, but that is just shorthand for the refund scam or the bank scam or whatever. Whenever they build a rapport with their victims, everyone will sound just like their grandmother or their grandfather, because that way they sound more endearing. Obviously, when I can see one computer, just like the phone system, I can potentially also see the CCTV system that he used. A good example is Fairmart. I can see the guy actually run up his CCTV cameras, and he logged in with the username of admin and an 8-character password. It enabled me then to log in and just use the computer or the CCTV. The scam room itself actually had 4 cameras pointing all 4 directions, each corner of the room. It was difficult to know exactly who you're speaking to. Obviously, they give fake names, but knowing that they will want to connect to my computer, the very easy thing to do is to change my desktop background to a very garish color, like purple or green or something. And then as the scammer connects to it, look on the CCTV and see who has got the green or purple screen. And then I can pinpoint and go, right, I'm speaking to that particular guy in the corner there. That's the one I'm going to focus on. So I'll be kind of picking up bits and pieces of files which may be on their computers, again, just to help identify who they are. Sometimes some of the computers have ID card information or spreadsheets with real names on it. So I'll be kind of looking for that. I know this is a little bit vague, but equally I don't want to let the scammers know exactly all of my tricks, but there are definitely techniques that I can use to figure out exactly what they're doing. I was in the fortunate position that not only could I see live CCTV, but they actually had recordings of historic events. And when I did rewind the footage, I could see them position certain cameras and actually turn them around. I was able to kind of roughly work out where things were, but I still couldn't figure it out. So I have a colleague who does something very similar to me. He's called Carl Rock, and he's in India. He has got a drone. And I asked him, would you be able to help me take photographs to kind of figure out where these scam offices are? He flew the drone over the top of the main building and then out to the back of the building as well. When it comes to reporting crime, it's actually very difficult in India. The best way to get any action on the ground from India is to go directly to the local police where that call center is nearest. It is not enough to say the people in that building are pretending to be a bank or Amazon. What I have to do is present a victim to the local police to say this person has had money stolen and it comes from that building, and here are the people involved. And that makes it very, very difficult. Obviously, I try to approach the police to say this scam is operating on your doorstep, but quite often that's ignored. And it's kind of a tolerated scam. If you seem to be stealing money from rich Westerners, for an example, that may be less of a crime in those countries than maybe other types of crime. Now, in the case of Fairmart, I was working with a documentary team. The BBC were involved. The police became interested only because of that involvement. Then the police raided those buildings. So they arrested Amit Chon. They dismissed the case because there wasn't enough evidence. I would love to see tougher laws when it comes to call centres. I think there should be laws to say if you're running a call centre, you have to give the person you're speaking the details of who you are, where you are, your real name, and your real company name. It would be easier, I think, to prosecute some of the scam call centres, and maybe that's the way to reduce some of them at least. I actually ask scammers, why do you do this? The answers that I usually get, there will be people who say the only way that I can make money is through scamming. And undoubtedly that's the case. But everybody's different. There are not enough jobs for young people. And don't forget, these people in general, they speak English, so they're well educated. They come from the equivalent of middle class backgrounds. They have their education levels. I've seen the CVs sitting on some of the computers. They generally know what they're getting into. So if there was an opportunity to have another job, some will tell me that they will take those other jobs. And some of them do say, I have no choice. I'm only going to do this for a year or two. I personally think the primary reason is the reason why so many people are in it is greed. I have had scammers who have said, well, I do this as kind of revenge for colonial corruption. I do speak to some scammers who do have a conscience, and some of them have already reached out to me and exposed their own bosses in the whole thing. And that's admirable. India is more than likely where your robocall is going to come from, which is a really sad reflection on India, because India is a fantastic country. But it now means that people, when they hear an Indian accent on the phone, are just that more wary, and that is incredibly sad. Other than India, I have personally encountered ones in Ukraine and Tunisia. The Tunisian call centre targeted French-speaking countries, including France. There's a few different ways that scammers will attempt to find victims, and I guess the primary one, someone pretending to be your bank or a large company like Amazon. Unfortunately, if you've got a landline, that is a typical thing you will hear every single day. And one of the biggest ones, for example, is a fake invoice. If you've started a conversation with a scammer, they want to get at your money. And they will target you in a few different ways. The first one is wanting access to your computer and therefore wanting access to your bank account. They will get you to make a transfer, or they'll blacken your screen and they'll make the transfer. The other one is they don't really need or want access to your computer, but they will try to convince you to go to your bank and move money by socially engineering you to send money or withdraw money, put it in a box, and people unbelievably still do this, and send it to another address. And the third one is they will persuade you to go out and buy a gift card, and there's different ways that they can do that, and read out the gift card number. And if you do that, that's equivalent to directly putting it into a scammer's account. And the most obvious way these days of getting money cleanly for scammers is to use cryptocurrency. There's other sorts of scams. You may have seen SMS messages saying there's a parcel being delivered, or a different sort of SMS message targeting someone in your family. Recently, I've come across a group who were operating out of London, and they were pretending to be the son or daughter of someone who had lost their phone. So they would send a message saying, "Hi mum, I've lost my phone. This is my new number. Can you contact me on this? I need to get some money quickly." It's not easy having multiple identities, and I have my own family life to deal with like everybody else. Doing this in the evening times did take up an awful lot of time, so I do work very odd hours, and I have to keep the same hours as scammers do. So, I'm on the night shift just with the scammers as well, so it can be difficult. I have worked in IT for quite a number of years, although these days I could maybe teach a course on it. I haven't got the formal qualifications. Because I have dug into scams more than the average person, I probably know scams better than most scammers. I'm still learning. I still want to understand better some of the systems that scammers use. They evolve, but I would like to think I evolve with them. I am working on projects that will help victims using AI before scammers start using AI against victims. So I have a YouTube page. The channel name is Jim Browning, which is dedicated to combating scammers.